is a day later than I intended, but hey, it's still coming out. So today I wanted to talk about Suicide Squad. I would have been talking about Suicide Squad yesterday when it was comic book day, but I overslept and then had things to do, so I didn't get a chance to film it. Sorry, my bad. But it's still coming out. Suicide Squad is a bit of a thing right now. A lot of people either love it or hate it. Are you just the average, everyday person who wants to go see a superhero film where, like, things explode and there's lots of bright colors and they win at the end of the day and everything is happy? Then this is a movie for you. If, on the other hand, you are either a super hardcore DC fangirl, fanboy, whatever, or a super hardcore movie buff and cares about construction and storytelling, maybe don't go see this. I, unfortunately, happen to fall in both of those camps of somebody who really loves DC. DC was my baby growing up. I loved Batman, I loved all of the villains in it, and honestly, I was excited for this film because one of the most interesting things about the DC comics are their villains. Their villains are so well constructed, not two-dimensional. They have backstories and motivations and all of these things that are super important to the characters. And so I was like, okay, Suicide Squad, it's all about the villains. Like, we don't have these very bland, I'm just gonna do the right thing superheroes, because they are. We have these interesting characters with interesting motivations who could be good, could be bad, or sort of left in this weird middle ground, working together to do something good, which is a great premise, and I love the Suicide Squad comics. They're good. If you haven't read any, I recommend picking some up. And I'm somebody who loves film and loves watching films and how they are constructed and the writing and the storytelling. All of my favorite films are trying to do more with the medium, and this is definitely not that. Does that mean that if you are just the average citizen and you just want to go on your Friday night date night out and watch this movie, that it's a bad movie? No, sure, that's fine. You can go and watch it. Do I think that this movie is anything groundbreaking or something that I will remember in a year? No, I don't think so. A lot of people are talking about how they think that it was over-edited, and I do agree, especially in the beginning. It was very choppy. It had this feeling of, like, okay, let's get all of this information out as fast as we can so we can move on to the story, and then that just persisted throughout most of the film. And I was like, okay, so that would be fine for the beginning. We get introduced to all of these characters who a lot of people might not know. Deadshot is a pretty main character in this, and he's a little-known villain to a lot of people. Most people are going to know the Joker and Harley Quinn, but who the fuck knows Boomerang? And a lot of people don't even know about Katana, and she's a super awesome badass lady, and if you haven't read Birds of Prey, also recommended. So it was this thing for me like Guardians of the Galaxy, where you have this little-known, smaller story inside of the extended universe with all of these characters that are super interesting but not one of the heavy hitters. Nobody is going to know who these characters are until this film comes out, except for maybe Joker and Harley Quinn. And they have an interesting story to tell. It is a great premise where you can do something because you aren't tied down to these predisposed notions. And they made a very generic, money-making superhero film. They didn't do anything. I was so excited with Guardians of the Galaxy because it was funny, and it was able to introduce to you all of these characters with their varied backgrounds and different motivations, all coming together to do something, and I believed it. I cared about them. It made sense that they were doing this. Almost the exact sort of group mentality in Suicide Squad, and I didn't believe it. There is a point where one of the characters says, I've already lost one family, I'm not gonna lose another. And I'm like, since when are you guys family? You've worked together. This is the first time you're working together, and this is the first interaction you're having with each other, really. I'm not sure that you would care about these characters as much as you're saying you do. There were certain interactions that I thought were better than others. There was a lot of very obvious panhandling in a way. You could tell which characters were disposable. And that was one of the things that really broke this movie for me, because in the Suicide comic, you cared about all of those villains, and when one of them dies, it hurts, because you know that they are trying to do something good to get back to their life, to fix themselves, and not only did they fail, but now they are dead. Whereas in this movie, they're very much portrayed as, we're the bad guys, and we're only doing this good thing because, well, I guess we have to. And that's not what Suicide Squad was to me. It starts that way, but it has a whole lot more heart than I felt in this film. The only characters that really had that heart was Deadshot and Diablo. Every other villain in that group, doing it for selfish reasons. Boomerang, sure, whatever. That's sort of his shtick. Harley Quinn, she actually has a whole lot of heart in the Suicide Squad story. She actually has a romance with Deadshot in the Suicide story, which is super interesting because we all know her as like the head over heels in love with the Joker type person. And there are reasons for that I won't spoil, but yeah, it's a lot different than what this movie ended up being. If you want another video where it talks about the cinematic universe and like why there's such problems with DC's, I recommend going and watching Comic Book Girl 19's video on it, because while she is very cynical when it comes to these movies and is more of a Marvel fan, she is somebody who cares a whole lot about comics in general and these comic movies bringing more people into comics. I do want to say that from what I could see, the acting was really good. Will Smith did a great job. Margot Robbie, great job as Harley Quinn. I was actually super nervous going into this that she was going to be doing the stereotypical just crazy person, because that's easy to do with Harley Quinn, but she's actually very smart and very funny. And you can tell that she's putting on the crazy person as an act, where she's not actually that crazy. She's crazy, but she's not that crazy. The acting was great, and the writing was lacking. And part of it might be that the director was only given a couple of weeks to write this script, and he had never done something of this scale and this caliber before, and that's really unfortunate, but it's probably the case. And then even if that main story was actually good, despite all of the odds, they reshot things, edited things differently to make it have a different tone entirely from what the film originally was going to be, because you want that happy-go-lucky superheroes at the end of the day, whereas Suicide Squad is actually a very dark, sort of sad comic. It can have those happy moments, but it's at its core has a completely different tone than the tone that this film tried to portray. I might make a blog post which is filled with spoilers and goes into all of the nitty-gritty details of things that bothered me in this film, because there were a lot of little things that bothered me, and I tried to just give an overall impression of why I wasn't the biggest fan of this. I will link that in the description of this video, but for now, I hope you guys are having a lovely week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!